I'm Kimberly, 25, female. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment in a city that never seems to sleep. By day, I'm a paralegal, drowning in legal briefs and case files, a job that values precision and order. My life is like my apartment, neat, functional, and devoid of unnecessary luxuries. It's a life I built for myself, piece by piece, on a foundation of discipline and quiet determination. My family, however, has always seen my lifestyle differently. To them, I wasn't disciplined, I was cheap. I wasn't prudent, I was a bargain hunter who didn't know how to enjoy life. They had no idea that my simple life was a fortress, and inside its walls, I was guarding a secret that would ultimately shatter the fragile illusion of our family. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My reputation in the family was cemented early. I was the girl who brought a reusable water bottle to theme parks, who packed sandwiches for road trips, and whose eyes would light up at a 2-for-1 deal at the grocery store. It started as a necessity when I was a teenager, but it quickly became a running joke for my mother, Susan, and my younger brother, Mark. I remember one family dinner vividly. It was for my mom's birthday, held at a mid-range Italian restaurant she loved. Mark, who had just started a junior position in marketing, was already talking about his next big commission check. His girlfriend, Ashley, was scrolling through photos on her phone of designer bags she was planning to buy. When the waiter came to take our drink orders, Mark ordered a fancy imported beer, Ashley a glass of expensive red wine, and my mother a cocktail. When he got to me, I smiled and said, "Just water with lemon for me, please." Mark groaned theatrically. "Oh, here we go. Kim, for once in your life, can you just live a little? It's Mom's birthday. I'll even pay for it." His offer wasn't generous, it was a performance. It was designed to highlight my frugality and his supposed magnanimity. Ashley giggled behind her hand. "It's cute, Mark. She's like one of those extreme couponers from TV." And my mother just sighed, a tired, disappointed sound she had perfected over the years. "Kimberly, honey, we just want you to have nice things. You work so hard at that law firm." I tried to explain. "I'm perfectly happy with water. I'm saving up." "Saving for what?" Mark scoffed. "A lifetime supply of instant noodles you've been saving up since you were 16. What are you even saving for?" I never gave them a real answer because the truth was too complex. The truth was tied to my late father and the lessons taught to me by my Uncle David. My father's death in a workplace accident when I was 17 was a tragedy that brought a substantial wrongful death settlement. My mother, consumed by grief, spent her portion quickly, trying to fill the void with material things. My share was put into a trust managed by my uncle. Uncle David, a retired electrician, was the opposite of my mother. He was quiet, thoughtful, and understood the value of a dollar because he had worked hard for every one he'd ever earned. On my 18th birthday, he sat me down not with a flashy gift, but with a stack of pamphlets on index funds, compound interest, and long-term investment strategies. "This money, Kim," he'd said, his voice gentle but firm, "is not a lottery ticket. It's a safety net. It's a head start your father wanted you to have. Don't waste it. Make it grow. Live modestly, invest wisely, and one day, you'll have something more valuable than any fancy car or designer bag. You'll have freedom." I took his words to heart. While my peers were taking out student loans for huge universities, I went to a local community college for 2 years before transferring to a state school, living at home to save money. While Mark was getting a new car from our mother as a high school graduation present, I was learning the city's bus routes. My paralegal salary was decent, but I lived as if I made half of that. I funneled the majority of my income, plus the carefully managed returns from my investments, back into my portfolio. My bargain hunting wasn't a quirk, it was a strategy. My simple apartment wasn't a sign of struggle. It was a choice that allowed my net worth to grow silently, exponentially, in the background of my life. But my family couldn't see that. They saw my thrift, store clothes, my 10-year-old car, and my aversion to expensive restaurants as a personal failing, a lack of ambition. They measured success by what you could show off, and by their standards, I was a complete and utter failure. Little did they know, the girl with the coupon book was building an empire they couldn't possibly imagine. The pressure campaign began, as most things did, on social media. My brother Mark and his girlfriend Ashley became obsessed with the idea of a 2-week vacation to Bali. Their feeds were suddenly filled with pictures of infinity pools, volcanic beaches, and floating breakfasts. They weren't just planning a trip. They were curating a fantasy, and they expected their reality to match it. The problem, of course, was money. Mark's entry-level salary and Ashley's barista wages were barely enough to cover their rent and car payments, let alone an international luxury vacation. But in their minds, that was just a minor logistical hurdle. It started with casual hints. During our weekly family phone call, my mother would say things like, "Oh, Mark and Ashley are looking at the most beautiful resorts. It would be so wonderful for them to have a real break. They work so hard." I would just nod and make noncommittal sounds. "That's nice, Mom." But the hints soon escalated into direct requests, always funneled through our mother. She called me one Tuesday evening, her voice laced with a carefully constructed casualness. "Kimberly, honey, I was just thinking. You know how you're always so good with your money." I knew where this was going. "I try to be, Mom." "Well, Mark and Ashley have their hearts set on this Bali trip. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, you know. They found a great deal on flights, but the resort is a little pricey. I was thinking, since you don't really go on vacations or spend much on yourself, maybe you could help them out a little." As a gift. The phrase "as a gift" was key. It wasn't a loan, which they would have no intention of repaying. It was a gift, an obligation, framed as a loving gesture from a responsible older sister to her struggling younger brother. "How much are they looking for?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Oh, I don't know," she said airily. "Whatever you feel comfortable with. But you know, a few thousand would really make a world of difference for them. It would be their big trip before they start thinking about settling down." A few $1,000s. To them, it was a rounding error, a small portion of the imaginary hoard they believed I was sitting on from my extreme saving. To me, it was a significant amount of money that I had earned and invested carefully. It felt less like a request and more like a demand, a tax on my responsible lifestyle. For the next 2 weeks, the pressure was relentless. Mark would send me links to the resort with texts like, "Look at this place. Can you imagine? We'd have the best time." Ashley would tag me in Instagram giveaways for luggage and travel vouchers. My mother would call with guilt-laden sighs, talking about how stressed Mark was and how he deserved this. I felt trapped. Part of me wanted to scream that their financial irresponsibility wasn't my problem. But another, weaker part of me just wanted the pressure to stop. I hated the conflict. I hated the feeling of being the family disappointment, the tight-fisted Scrooge who wouldn't share her wealth, so I caved. But I did it on my own terms. I wasn't going to fund their entire fantasy. I decided on a figure that was generous by any normal standard, but would undoubtedly be a disappointment to them. I transferred $500 into Mark's bank account with the note, "Have a wonderful trip. Love, Kimberly." The response was almost immediate. A text from Mark. "Thanks for the $500. I guess it's a start." A start. My jaw tightened. A few hours later, my mother called. "Kimberly, I saw you sent Mark some money. That was nice of you." The pause was heavy with unspoken criticism. "It's what I could contribute, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "It's just," she began, choosing her words carefully. "They were hoping for a bit more of a boost. With all the money you have saved up, I thought, well, I guess I thought you'd be a little more generous to your only brother." The conversation ended shortly after that. Later that night, I saw a passive-aggressive post from Ashley on her Instagram story. It was a poll, when you ask for a little help and get pocket change instead, with laughing and crying emojis. There was no doubt who it was about. That was the real betrayal. It wasn't just about the money. They didn't see my $500 as a gift. They saw it as an insult. It was proof that I was exactly who they thought I was: selfish, unloving, and cheap. They felt entitled not just to my money, but to a specific amount of my money, an amount they had decided I owed them. My contribution wasn't enough to buy their affection or stop their judgment. It was just more fuel for their fire. As I lay in bed that night, I realized that no matter what I did, I would never be good enough in their eyes. A couple of weeks after the vacation incident, Mark called me in a panic. "Kim, I'm in a huge jam. I have a massive presentation for work tomorrow, and my laptop just died. Completely fried. Can I please come over and use yours to finish it? It's my whole career on the line here." His voice was dripping with manufactured desperation. I hesitated. I hated having people in my space, a sanctuary of calm and order, but he was my brother, and the career on the line guilt trip was effective. Fine, Mark, but don't be late. I have to be up early, I said, resigning myself to a disrupted evening. He arrived 20 minutes later, looking flustered and carrying a USB drive. I set him up at the small desk in my living room, got him a glass of water, and then retreated to my bedroom to give him some privacy and read a book. My apartment was small, so I could hear the clicking of the keyboard as he worked. About an hour in, he called out, "Hey, Kim, do you have any coffee? I'm fading fast." "Sure," I replied, putting my book down. "I'll make a fresh pot." I went to the kitchen, which was adjacent to the living room, but separated by a short hallway. I started grinding the beans, the noise of the grinder filling the small space. It probably took me about 5 or 6 minutes to prepare the coffee maker and get it brewing. In that short window of time, my life changed forever. What I didn't know was that Mark wasn't just working on his presentation. His eyes had been scanning my desk. It was mostly neat. A stack of legal pads, a pen holder, my work laptop. But sitting on the corner was my mail from that day, which I hadn't sorted yet. On top of the pile was a thick, cream-colored envelope bearing the logo of a prestigious wealth management firm, the one Uncle David had set me up with years ago. Curiosity, or perhaps a more malicious sense of entitlement, got the better of him. He knew I didn't have a credit card with them. He knew I didn't bank there. Shielded by the noise of the coffee grinder, he slid the letter opener from my pen holder and slit the envelope open. He pulled out the multi-page document inside. It was my quarterly portfolio summary. He scanned past the market analysis and performance charts, his eyes landing on the one number that mattered, the total portfolio value. He must have read it 2 or 3 times, his brain struggling to process the string of numbers. It wasn't a few $1,000s saved up. It wasn't even 100,000. The figure at the bottom of the page read $12, $483, $291, $54, $12 million. I can only imagine what that moment was like for him. The brother who had mocked me for using coupons, who had scoffed at my $500 gift, was now staring at a number that was beyond his wildest comprehension. The entire narrative of his life, of our family, had just been obliterated. His older sister, the boring, cheap paralegal, was secretly a multimillionaire. His hands must have been shaking. His first instinct was not to confront me, not to ask questions, but to secure evidence. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the camera app. He laid the statement flat, smoothed out the crease, and took a clear, damning photograph of the summary page, making sure the total value was perfectly in focus. He slipped the document back into the envelope, trying to make it look undisturbed, though his trembling fingers probably failed him. He placed it back on the stack of mail just as I walked back into the living room with 2 mugs of coffee. "Here you go," I said, placing one beside him. He jumped, startled. "Oh, thanks, Kim." His face was pale, and he refused to make eye contact, staring intently at the laptop screen. "Everything okay?" I asked, sensing a weird shift in his energy. "Yeah, fine, just stressed about this presentation." He mumbled, "You know what? I think I've got enough done for tonight. I can finish the rest at the office in the morning." He started packing up his things with a strange urgency, practically throwing his USB drive into his pocket. He was out the door less than 2 minutes later, leaving a half-full mug of coffee on my desk and a gaping hole in my life that I didn't yet know existed. As the door clicked shut behind him, he carried my deepest secret with him, not as a brother, but as a spy who had just found the ultimate leverage. The silence lasted for exactly 12 hours. The next morning, as I was sitting at my desk at work, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mark. "Mark, we need to talk. Call me on your lunch break. It's urgent." The word urgent set off a small alarm bell. Mark's emergencies were usually self-inflicted and trivial, like needing money for concert tickets. I figured it was something similar and decided I'd call him later when I wasn't busy. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Mom, Kimberly, your brother told me everything." "You need to call me right now. This is a family matter." Now the alarm bells were ringing loudly. Told her everything about what? My mind raced. Had something happened to him? Was he in some kind of trouble? I excused myself from my desk and went to a quiet hallway to call my mom. She answered on the first ring. "What's going on?" I asked immediately. "Is Mark okay?" "Oh, he's okay," she said, her voice eerily calm but with a sharp, accusatory edge. The question is, Kimberly, are you okay? Are you in some kind of trouble? Is someone blackmailing you? I was completely lost. What are you talking about? I'm fine. Don't lie to me, she snapped, the calmness gone. Mark showed me the picture, the bank statement, $12 million. She said the number slowly, as if tasting each syllable. Have you been lying slowly, as if tasting each syllable? Have you been lying to us this whole time, your own family? My blood ran cold. The mail, the envelope on my desk, Mark, he hadn't just seen it. He had taken a picture. He had gone straight to our mother. The violation of privacy was so profound I felt dizzy. You have no right. I started, my voice trembling with shock and anger. No right? She shrieked. I am your mother. I have every right. To think of all the years we've watched you pinch pennies, feeling sorry for you, while you were sitting on a fortune. A fortune. Do you have any idea how we've struggled? Before I could even respond, my phone beeped with an incoming call. It was Mark. I ignored it and tried to speak to my mother, but she was on a roll. In that Bali trip, you gave your brother, your only brother, $500, like you were throwing scraps to a dog, when you have $12 million. My phone buzzed again, a text from Ashley. I glanced at the notification preview. Ashley, Kimberly, I am absolutely disgusted. We thought you were family. The coordinated attack was overwhelming. It was clear they had spent the morning planning this. They had shared the photo, discussed their strategy, and decided to launch a full-scale emotional assault. I have to go. I said to my mother, my voice barely a whisper. I couldn't breathe. You are not hanging up on me. We need to have a family meeting tonight. You are going to explain yourself, and we are going to talk about how this money is going to be managed going forward. This is a family asset now. A family asset. The words hit me like a physical blow. I hung up. I couldn't listen to any more. I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding in my chest. My phone was now vibrating nonstop. A flood of messages poured in, a digital tidal wave of greed and entitlement. Mark, why did you hang up on Mom? You can't hide from this, Kim. We know the truth. Mark, I can't believe you. All those times I was struggling to pay rent and you said nothing. You just watched me struggle. Ashley, Mark is devastated. You have no idea how much you've hurt him. We could have used that money to put a down payment on a house to start our lives, Mom. I am coming over to your apartment at 7 p.m. Mark and Ashley will be with me. We are going to sort this out as a family. Don't even think about not being there. The tone had shifted completely. Gone was the concern for the bargain hunter. Gone was the pity. It was replaced by a cold, hard fury. They weren't hurt because I had lied. They were furious because they had been denied access to wealth they now believed was rightfully theirs. I wasn't a person to them anymore. I was a vault they had just discovered the combination to, and they were coming with crowbars to pry it open. Staring at the torrent of messages on my screen, I felt a profound and chilling clarity. This wasn't my family. Not anymore. I stumbled back to my desk in a daze, unable to process the flurry of accusations lighting up my phone. I silenced it, but I could still feel its phantom vibrations in my pocket. The sense of violation was overwhelming. My home, my one private space, had been breached. My deepest secret, one tied to the most painful event of my life, was now being used as a weapon against me. For the rest of the afternoon, I went through the motions of work, my mind a million miles away. I reread the same paragraph of a legal document 10 times without absorbing a single word. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown to the 7 p.m. ambush my mother had announced. When I finally left the office, I didn't go home. I couldn't face that apartment. Instead, I drove to the one place that had always felt like a true sanctuary, my Uncle David's small, quiet house in the suburbs. He opened the door and his kind, weathered face immediately registered my distress. Kimmy, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I stepped inside, and the moment the door closed behind me, the dam broke. I collapsed onto his old, comfortable sofa and told him everything, the words spilling out between sobs. I told him about Mark snooping, the picture of the statement, the flood of angry messages, and my mother's chilling declaration that my money was now a family asset. He listened patiently, his expression growing sterner with every word. He didn't interrupt, he just let me pour it all out. When I was finished, exhausted and emotionally raw, he sat in silence for a long moment, his gaze fixed on a point in the distance. Finally he spoke, his voice low and steady. I am so sorry, Kimmy. I'm sorry they put you through this. This isn't about you lying. This is about their own greed. They're showing you exactly who they are. You need to believe them. Mom wants to have a family meeting tonight. I whispered. She's demanding I explain myself. Explain what? He said, his voice rising slightly with indignation. That you were responsible, that you honored your father's memory by building a future instead of squandering it, that you followed the plan we laid out for you. You have nothing to explain and nothing to apologize for. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. This money came from a place of tragedy. We turned it into a tool for your security, for your freedom. It was never meant to be a slush fund for your brother's vacations or your mother's whims. You don't owe them a single penny, and you don't owe them an explanation. His words were like a balm on my frayed nerves. He wasn't just validating my feelings, he was giving me permission to have them. He was reminding me of the origin of the money and the purpose it was meant to serve. It was a shield, not a shared prize. They won't stop, David. I said, my voice thick with despair. They'll keep calling, texting, showing up. They'll try to guilt me into giving them what they want. Only if you let them, he said firmly. You have a choice here. It's a hard choice, I know, but you can choose peace. You can choose to protect what you've built. Not just the money, but your life, your sanity. We sat there for another hour talking through every possibility. He helped me see that this wasn't a negotiation. It was a boundary. For years, I had bent over backwards to keep the peace, absorbing their insults and enduring their judgment. I had paid a high emotional price for a relationship that was conditional and superficial. The price of my peace, I realized, was cutting the cord. It was accepting the painful truth that the family I wanted was not the family I had. With newfound resolve, I took out my phone. My hands were steady now. I opened my contacts list. I found Ashley's name first. I looked at it for a second, then pressed the block button. A small pop-up asked me to confirm. I did. Then I did the same for Mark. My finger hovered over my mother's name for a moment longer. A lifetime of memories, good and bad, flashed through my mind, but the raw, entitled voice from the phone call this morning drowned them all out. I pressed block. A profound sense of quiet washed over me. It was a terrifying, liberating silence. I knew this wouldn't be the end. They would try other ways to reach me. They would show up, just as my mother had threatened, but I had made my decision. I was no longer going to set myself on fire to keep them warm. I was drawing a line in the sand, and I would not let them cross it. After leaving my uncle's house, I felt a fragile sense of resolve. I knew blocking their numbers was only the first step. The real test was yet to come. I drove home, my stomach in knots, half expecting to see them already camped out in front of my building. The lobby was empty, and I made it up to my apartment without incident, the silence inside feeling both peaceful and eerie. I spent the next 2 days in a state of high alert. Every footstep in the hallway made me jump. Every time a car door slammed on the street below, my heart leaped into my throat. There were no calls from unknown numbers, no emails, no attempts to reach me through social media. The silence was unnerving. I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they had gotten the message. I was wrong. On the third day, as I was walking home from work, my mind preoccupied with a difficult case, I saw them. They were standing directly in front of the main entrance to my apartment building, positioned like a barricade. My mother, Susan, stood in the center, her arms crossed, her face a mask of grim determination. Mark was beside her, bouncing on the balls of his feet with a restless, angry energy, and next to him was Ashley, staring at her phone but radiating a smug sense of anticipation. It was a planned ambush. My first instinct was to turn around and run, but where would I go? This was my home. I took a deep breath, clutched my work bag tighter, and walked towards them. This had to happen. It was better to face it head on. As I approached, my mother stepped forward. "Kimberly, you've been avoiding us," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "That's no way to treat your family. Blocking our numbers was a really childish move, Kim." Mark chimed in, stepping closer. He had a confrontational glint in his eye. "Did you really think we'd just disappear?" I stopped a few feet away from them, creating a small buffer of personal space. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "Please let me pass." My mother let out a short, bitter laugh. "Nothing to talk about. You're hiding $12 million from us, and you think there's nothing to talk about. We are your family. We raised you. You need to understand something," I said, looking directly at her, then at Mark. "That money is mine. It's not a family asset. It's not a lottery win. It came from Dad's settlement and a family inheritance that Uncle David helped me invest." The mention of the settlement made my mother flinch, but she recovered quickly. "Don't you dare bring your father into this. If he were here, he'd be ashamed of your selfishness. He would have wanted you to take care of your family." "I agree," Mark said, his voice rising. We're not asking for all of it. We're not greedy. We just want what's fair. $1 million for Mom so she can finally retire properly. $1 million for me and Ashley to buy a house and get started. That's it. It's barely a fraction of what you have. You wouldn't even miss it." I stared at him, dumbfounded by the sheer audacity. He had it all planned out, the numbers divvied up. They had sat around and decided how to spend my money. "The answer is no," I said, the words coming out like chips of ice. Ashley finally looked up from her phone. "Why are you being like this? You don't even do anything with it. You live in this tiny apartment and wear second-hand clothes. What is the point of having all that money if you don't use it to help the people who love you? The people who love me?" I repeated, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. "Is that what you call it? Mocking me for years, calling me cheap and pathetic, taking a photo of my private financial documents and blasting it to the whole family, pressuring me for money and then insulting the gift I gave you. That's not love, it's entitlement." Silence fell. My words, sharp and true, hung in the air between us. Mark's face turned red with anger. My mother's expression hardened. "I am your mother," she said, her voice dangerously low. "I sacrificed everything for you and your brother after your father died. You owe me. You don't get it." I said, shaking my head slowly, "I don't owe you anything. My relationship with you, with all of you, is not a transaction, and even if it were, you've made it very clear what my presence in your lives is worth." I took a step towards the door. Mark moved to block me. "You're not going anywhere until we sort this out. Move, Mark," I said, my voice dropping to a command. For a second, we were locked in a standoff. Then I simply sidestepped him, pulled out my key fob, and swiped it over the sensor. The lock buzzed open. I pulled the heavy glass door open and slipped inside, letting it swing shut behind me. They immediately started banging on the glass, their faces distorted with rage. My mother was shouting, her words muffled, but her fury was clear. Mark was yelling my name. I didn't look back. I walked straight to the elevator, my heart hammering against my ribs. As the doors slid shut, I leaned against the cool metal wall, closing my eyes. I could still hear the faint sound of them shouting from the lobby. But for the first time, their noise didn't hurt me. It was just a sound, a desperate, fading echo from a life I was finally leaving behind. The days immediately following the confrontation were filled with a strange kind of quiet. I expected more attempts at contact, perhaps angry letters or calls from unknown numbers, but there was nothing. It seemed the finality in my voice and the cold glass of the lobby door had delivered a message that blocking their numbers could not. They were gone. The silence they left behind was vast and unsettling at first, like the eerie calm after a violent storm. The grief I had been holding at bay finally washed over me. It was a peculiar kind of mourning. I wasn't grieving the loss of the people they were. I was grieving the loss of the family I had always wished they could be. I mourned the mother who could have been proud of my discipline instead of ashamed of it. I mourned the brother who could have been my confidant instead of my adversary. I grieved for the 25 years I had spent trying to earn the love and respect of people who were incapable of giving it freely. My apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt tainted by Mark's betrayal. Every time I looked at my desk, I remembered what he had done. I realized I couldn't heal in a place filled with bad memories, so I made a change. A big one. I contacted a real estate agent, and within a month I moved. I found a beautiful, light-filled condo in a completely different part of the city, with a small balcony that overlooked a park. It was modest by multimillionaire standards, but it was a palace to me. The act of packing up my old life and setting up my new one was incredibly therapeutic. Each box I sealed felt like closing a chapter. With the physical distance came emotional clarity. I started to use my money not for lavish things, but for experiences and comforts I had long denied myself. I bought a new, reliable car so I wouldn't have to worry about breaking down on the way to work. I signed up for a pottery class, something I had always wanted to try, and found a quiet joy in the messy, imperfect process of creating something with my hands. I started traveling, not to the flashy resorts Mark and Ashley dreamed of, but to quiet, beautiful places. A solo trip to see the autumn colors in New England, a weekend hiking in the mountains. Uncle David remained my anchor through it all. We had dinner once a week, and our conversations were a comforting constant in my new life. He never once said, "I told you so." He simply expressed his pride in my strength and his happiness in seeing me finally leave for myself. One evening, about 6 months after the move, he asked if I had heard from them at all. Not a word. I said, taking a sip of my tea. "It's like they just vanished. Sometimes silence is the clearest answer you'll ever get," he said gently. He was right, their silence told me everything I needed to know. It confirmed that their interest in me had been entirely conditional on what they could get from me. When the vault was locked, they simply moved on, likely complaining to anyone who would listen about their cruel, wealthy, and selfish relative. I am still the girl who looks for a good deal, who packs a lunch for work, and who believes in saving for the future. That part of me will never change, but the shame and secrecy are gone. I no longer live my life as an apology. The money my father left me, once a secret burden, is now what my Uncle David always said it would be, a tool for freedom. Freedom from worry, freedom from obligation, and most importantly, freedom from the crushing weight of a family's expectations. My life is quiet now, filled with the simple, peaceful sound of my own choices. And it is more valuable than any number on a bank statement.